pretty good. I was trying to get this into the shot. As you can see, I've done a little bit of color work on it because I think it needs a touch. So the first thing I'm going to do is uh, do a bit more sanding on the uh, pillars and base, just to kind of even that color out a little bit on the edges. You can see on this edge where the color or the torch kind of touched over a little bit. I'm not too concerned about that. And then on this side, I did a full burn with the torch and then ran some sandpaper over it to take some of that color out uh, for that rustic effect. I'm not sure how that's going to turn out, but I'm hoping it'll be nice. What else have I got going on here? So yeah, all you guys are going to be watching me do is sand and do a bit of drilling. And then I'm going to get a piece of vinyl hung up on the wall and hang up my candle holder. Probably just use a loop of string for that. Do a varnish spray. I won't be doing that tonight. There's no wind, and I want to ventilate the shed very well before I do that. Actually, I may do it with one of those doors open. I don't know. I don't really want to do it without some sort of backing behind the piece when I'm spraying, because overspray is a bitch. And I want to make sure I don't make too much of a mess. Alternately, I could do it flat and just do 2 sprays, or 3, 4 actually, because I'd have to do 4 different angles, and then I'd be good with that. But all you're going to see me do tonight is a bit of sanding, which I'll do while I'm talking to you guys. So if anyone's in chat, or when anyone gets to chat, I will obviously respond to you guys while I'm working at that. In the meantime, I've been convinced that I should watch The Terminal List. That's Chris Pratt's new series. Apparently he's a producer and the star. Oftentimes I'm leery of programs of that nature, but knowing what I know about Chris Pratt and his defiance of the Hollywood establishment, I think it will probably be worthwhile to have a look at. Dear God, did my head just... Oh, wow. Yeah, they do say bald men are blinding. But the fact is that the sun is going down. There's not a lot of... Surprisingly, there's not that much light in here. And I'm surprised that you guys can see me as clearly as you can. I think a significant portion of that is actually reflected light from the camera itself. Now I can't throw the... Yeah, okay. Maybe the light is shifted enough that it's not bouncing off my head the right way. In any case, I just finished watching the weekly White Pills on Discordia 3052's channel. I recommend subbing to her, and to Based Ape Streams. They're both friends of mine, and I always look to support my friends. Let's see here. So I'm putting on my gloves because, not that this is a dangerous process that I'm doing, but because it's messy. And with that bit of charring on the surface, it's going to be very messy. I'll be right back. I'm going to go turn on the light. Because the day is getting darker outside. So I will tip the camera. That's clean enough. I'll tip the camera down so you guys can see what I'm doing with my hands, which will be right around there. Don't mind the really fancy work boots that I wear. But basically what I'm doing is just scrubbing along the sides and getting in between a little bit. Now, normally I wouldn't sand this way because this will leave marks, but because I'm doing something fairly rustic and I wanted to add color to the top, it probably won't make that much of a difference at this point. To be honest, this is a bit of a screw up on my part. I should, instead of making basins for the bases, I should have simply glued them down and just cut the glue out from under them, leaving them flush. Unfortunately, I didn't do that, so as you can see, there's quite a lot of char sitting on that. Hello, Crow. What's the most difficult woodwork project you have tried? The single most difficult woodwork project I've tried, and I'll put my face back on cam for this, little higher, a little lower. The single most difficult thing I have tried is to make a Western-style bokken. If you know martial arts at all, you know a bokken is the wooden katana that they use in kendo and a few other different styles, ijitsu and things like that. What I'm trying to do is to create a sort of, that camera angle is terrible, it's going to drive me insane. What I'm trying to do is to create a sort of fusion practice sword, something that could potentially do contact, potentially, but would be Ido, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think it's spelled I-A-I-D-O, if I remember right, or Iijitsu. There are so many different martial arts, it's really hard to remember them all. Hi, Kellen, how you doing? Say hi to your stream. Sorry I can't stick around, but I hope you have a fun stream. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I do, yeah. Oh, okay, I see. Sorry about that, Crow. I misunderstood what you meant. Yeah, that's definitely the most ambitious project I've got going. I mean, I've built chests and things like that, but with that, you have generally either a set of plans or you can create a set of plans fairly easily. What I ended up doing with the bokken was finding a piece of wood. Someone who owed me a favor got me a piece of white birch, which smells incredible when you actually start to strip the bark off of it. It smells like wintergreen. So basically I filled the whole shop with the scent of toothpaste while I was stripping the bark off this thing. Unfortunately, I miscalculated my dimensions on a router and took about a 1/4 inch too much off of each side. And then when the piece finished changing dimension because of the lack of moisture, what happened was it shrank significantly. It's still perfectly grippable. It's a little small for my grip, but I have fairly big hands. And because it was white birch, which I expected to be a little harder than it is, the first time it made any contact with anything, it took a significant dent. It's also got a significant warp in it because of the narrow scope of the cut. It's still a beautiful piece. I absolutely love it, and I keep it actually near my bed. I don't think I'd ever actually use it on anyone because it would be extremely clumsy to use in the house, and I expect that if I did make full contact with, say, a bony part of the body, it would snap in a moment. But I did buy a cheap kendo bokken, which I used as the model and which will be used as the model for the next one. You can see here I've got a bunch of juniper branches. I really wish I'd found some very large branches. I would love to make a bokken out of juniper. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen, but I did purchase some cedar for a project that ended up falling through, and that will end up being the next piece that I make. And Well, you guys can't actually see what I'm doing with my hands anymore. So, I would try making one out of oak, but I would prefer to find something a little more traditional. Well, I would say traditionally English, but oak is English. But something domestic to Canada. Um, and having discovered that juniper is as hard as it is, I probably will use that. Maple is another option, but maple is very hard, and when it splinters, or when it breaks rather, it tends to take very sharp edges. A funny thing about oak is when you're working it barehanded, which is generally how I work, and how quite a lot of woodworkers do work, because gloves can be dangerous, it ends up turning your... No, we don't have ironwood here. But it ends up turning your fingers purple, which was really funny, because at the beginning of the COVID scare, when purple spots on the skin were one of the symptoms, which isn't it interesting how that's disappeared since. But when when that was one of the concerning symptoms, it was quite amusing to come out of the wood shop after working with a piece of oak and go to the cafeteria to have something to eat and look at my fingers and go, oh, I've got purple fingers again. And people around me would kind of give me a bit of an askance look for a second until I explained that it was from the oak. What else? If I could get my hands on it, I wouldn't mind actually trying to make something out of yew. Y-E-W, yew. Probably a longbow, to be honest. That's that English heritage of mine, rearing its ugly head. Yeah. Okay, let me just put this back on camera again, because I'm making progress. There we go. Yew bows are basically amazing. Yeah, I'm honestly amazed at the strength of the juniper I found. I've got a piece that's narrower around than my thumb in spaces, and I can put almost full force on that on a flex, and it doesn't seem to want to break particularly. This is a finicky process as well. I'm using a sponge, so I'm not getting quite as deep as I want. I'm going to switch to actual sandpaper and go this way. That's taking a little more of the burn out. I'm going to try to do these fairly uniform, get them fairly close. I'm not too worried about the bases, the burn on the bottom there. I'm thinking I'll leave that for aesthetic purposes. And I'm sure this is not the most exciting thing you could be watching on a Saturday evening, but it could be worse. Anyway, I was talking about the terminal list. I've been convinced that I should watch it. I was saying that where Chris Pratt is both producer and star, I tend to have a bit of a fan trepidation, I guess. I'd blowtorch them and make it all burn. Yeah, I would consider that, but what I'm going for is something a little less scorched, and trying to do something a little bit artsy. So what I'm actually going for, yeah, I should have that pretty good there now. There we go. Going for something a little less damaged looking and a little more artsy. There we go. That's not bad. Let's see, did this one. Okay, that one I've done quite a bit of work on already. And that one. Okay, so at this point I'm content with what I've got for color and finish. you'll notice that when I was doing this motion, hang on, I'll show you on this. You can see that it's created pretty significant, if I can get a better, there we go. You can see the striations in that. So now when I go to varnish this, those striations will be visible. And it'll give it a bit more of an artificial look to it. And again, that's really just for aesthetics. The next thing I have to do is the drilling, which I won't need my gloves for, and which I will bring the camera angle all the way up. You don't need to look at my terrible, terrible moves. So I need my drill, which I will put over here, and I'll give you guys the bird's eye view. And I need bits. Now, the easiest way to choose a bit. Oh dear, I may not. Oh, I have a set of spade bits I picked up. I don't need these. I was just about to say I don't have a bit that fits that, but I do. Okay. So there's my set of bits. These are brand new, and this will be the first time I've used one. So what I'm doing is I'm putting these candles more or less centered on them. So I need a bit that will be slightly wider than the candle, but not so much wider than the candle that it actually ends up eating too much room. 5/8 is too small. Next size up is 3/4, which I expect to be just slightly too big, but it's actually not a bad thing. 3/4 is slightly too small. So I'll go with 7/8. The reason that I'm picking a piece, or a bit rather, that extends beyond the edges is because I want the hole to at least be bigger diameter-wise than the candle, so the candle will simply sit down in it. I will be pre-anchoring these, so I will be burning them, dripping a bit of wax into the holes when I'm done, and setting them, or seating them, I should say. So we found our bit, 7/8. Fold that back up. You can tell it's cheap because it says Work Pro. And get that lined up with the edge here so I can clamp it down. I do believe I have small clamps that will hold that. Where do I put them? They're over here. Okay. You are no longer useful because you are broken. You will sit there. Okay. So all I'm going to use for this, oops, there we are, is a simple C-clamp. And I will actually want a caul for that. Now a caul is what we call a piece of wood used to protect a surface we're working on. That should be effective. Now, because I'm working there, I'm going to actually come under there and pin that there. And of course I'm over a bit too far for an easy turn. I'm turning it the right way. Yeah, okay, there we are. So now, once that's down good and firm, it's good and solid. Okay. Now, what I've got here is an impact driver. But the good thing about this one is it's got a variable speed, which means that I can start off slow, and once I'm confident that I have my hole in the right place, I can go ahead and power down. Now, to set a hole, I need a straight edge, and that is quite straight enough. And a pencil. And you just kind of eyeball this. And perpendicular. So your center on this one will be right about here. Okay, do the same thing on all of them. And the good thing about having cut them all off level on the table saw earlier is that it makes it significantly easier to work out where your center should be. You'll notice too that I'm not, okay, hang on. That's a little harder to see from that distance. Okay, so you'll notice that the actual center of the branch itself is not where I'm aiming with the drill, because on all but this one and potentially this one, they're really far off center. And trying to do it that way would be disastrous. Okay, that one looks actually perfectly centered there. Plus, what'll happen is when I do the drilling, you'll get an effect of a grain slope. It's difficult to explain beforehand, but once I've got the cut made, you'll see what I'm talking about. And I'll check live chat again in just a few seconds here once I get these marks made. That one I think I'll put just a little bit to this side. And again, like I say, I'm basically eyeballing a lot of this. Oh dear. I think I may have run into a discovered error here in my judgment. It looks like this piece might be too small for that 7/8 bit. And that's pretty much center there. Okay. That goes back there. That goes there. I will be putting my apron on now for a couple of reasons. One, because it's my work uniform. And two, because using only one clamp, there is a significant possibility that when I start to apply force, the piece may spin, and because I'll be leaning pretty much in against it, this piece could swing out and strike me. If it strikes the apron is pretty absorbent for force, so that makes it a little safer. Get my glasses on. I won't be using ear protection for this. I will suggest you turn your sound down, just on the off chance that this does make quite a lot of noise, which it probably will. And actually, I'm going to start on this end. So I want to make sure that's just a little off kilter there. And again, like I say, I'm basically eyeballing a lot of this. Okay, so I've just discovered that that juniper is so hard that I want to drill a pilot hole before I put the spade bits down. So I'll grab that. And I should have a small bit in here that will fit that guy. Let's have a look here. We'll go with this one because, well, I'll show you now. The end of this one is roughly as wide as the base of my spade bit, so that when I start drilling, I should ideally have a perfectly good pilot hole to allow this bit to follow the path of this one. One thing I am going to do, though, before I do that, is get a piece of tape. And the reason I'm getting tape is because I want a depth marker. So these pieces are roughly 1 3/4 inches tall. I don't want to go particularly deep, so I'll take a look at this and check it against the width of my tape, and the width of my tape is perfectly acceptable. I believe the tape is about 3/4 to 1 inch wide, so that's more than enough to anchor a candle when it's done properly. So what I do now, take my bit, work out where the width of the tape would be, and take that much up. And then I'm just rolling this down, and then rolling it up tight so that the bit gets a dandy wrap of tape on it. There we are. Now, at the same time, I can also wrap my spade bit in order to, let's see here now. There's the end of the spade bit. Put my thumb there for a more or less mark, and that should be about good there. And then it's basically the same thing, it's just wrapping again. Oops. And this is actually less critical depth-wise than the initial pilot hole, because if I end up having to go deeper with this, it doesn't matter if I run over the tape. But if I screw up my pilot holes, I potentially could punch right through the bottom of the piece. I'm not likely to do that because I'm not a blithering dolt, but it has been known to happen in the past. Now, I'm going to give you a warning about doing what I'm about to do. If you decide to use your hand to tighten down your chuck, do not hold it this way, you will break your wrist. Doing it that way is much safer. It's hard on the hands, but it's less likely that you're going to damage any bone in your wrist. Get your angle right, and start slow, and give her. Then all we do is go to the depth of the tape. You can knock off the... It's quite sappy still. You can always knock the wood off. Not necessary, because it will work itself off when you start your next hole. Setting my spade bit different. I will do that immediately after drilling these holes. Okay, now let's let that sit and cool, but I need to make sure I pick it clean first. So while I'm doing this, if you guys have anything you want to ask me, now is a good time, because I'm going to take a moment to sit down. Actually, I won't be sitting down, but I'll take a moment to deal with your questions. Or your comments, I guess. This is actually just the end of an old probe that I ended up tearing apart some time ago because it was in bad shape. A scratch-all, sorry, not a probe. And that looks good. I can leave that for a while. The heat on the bit will have melted some of the adhesive at the end of the tape, so what'll end up happening is I'll have to peel it off from that end. Put that... No, you're not back where you belong. Get back there. There. Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay. You don't want to stick in the board today. Okay, it's on the floor. That's a good spot for it. At least I know where it is. Let's see what chat has to say here. And yes, I'm just a goth. Oh, that explains why you burned them all black, Crow. Yeah, I haven't been a goth, well, on the outside, for a very long time. This cord is in a bad spot. Okay, it's out of the shot at least. Yeah, I've not been a goth for a very long time. Let's see here. What kind of wood treatments do you use? Do you mean finishes, or something that I'd be using before I started work, or what? Okay, you're talking about finishes. Odie's oil. I've never heard of Odie's oil. Punch it. Why not use 2 clamps? I could use 2 clamps, but I was fairly confident that with the amount of force I put down on this one clamp, it wasn't going anywhere. Odie's oil. I've never heard of Odie's oil. I think I have my phone out here with me. I don't? Okay. 31 this month, still occasionally go goth. The way I always looked at it was that goth was like being punk. It's far more about your attitude than anything else. Fashion-wise, yeah, I never went beyond wearing dark clothes and occasionally painting my nails. uh, yeah, pilot holes are generally a very good idea for pretty much anything. It turns out that this juniper that I'm working with is far harder than I thought it would be. Juniper is ordinarily classed as a softwood. And the fact that this is so very hard, I put down to the fact that it's gotten used to being covered in salt spray in the winter, and then just growing around it. So essentially, it's partway petrified. Um, I've never heard of Odie's oil. I'm guessing that's potentially a Danish oil or tongue oil. Um, that's interesting. Um, yeah, I've never heard of that particular product. If it's a finish, I've done oil finishes. I have a cutting board that I did in college. That's laminated maple with a very, very hard tongue oil finish. Uh, I don't do a heck of a lot of cooking at home where I do a lot of chopping. So the board is for sale. No one seems to want to meet my price. Finish and stabilize. Yeah, so that's probably tongue oil. Um, but the number of responses I've gotten when I posted the cutting board for sale uh, that had some variation of I can go to Walmart and buy something just like that. It's extremely irritating. Sure, you can go to Walmart and buy something like that for $30, where I'm selling one for 150 that your grandkids can use if you take care of it. Yeah, I don't think your grandkids are going to use anything you buy at Walmart. In fact, I would expect that next year you'd have to go to Walmart and buy another one. Which is one of the big gripes I have about modern North American culture. There's a distinct tendency towards wastefulness. Um, how to put it? People would rather destroy something and buy another rather than buy something they could maintain a little bit and it would last beyond their lifetime. Which is kind of disheartening for cabinet makers because that's pretty much what we do. We make things that will outlast people who buy them. Uh, it kind of comes down to that whole memento mori thing. Remember that you too must die. Uh, anyway, check for any more chats. A finish and yeah, it sounds like probably tongue oil. I don't think Danish oil is necessarily a stabilizer. I know tongue oil is, and it's food safe. Uh, Now, that said, if you go to buy tongue oil, make sure you buy one that is food safe. Some of them apparently have chemical preservatives and things added to them. Not the best. Okay, so I'll give you the bird's eye view back again. Really, really want to get into blacksmithing now that I am a registered Maker's Hallmark for jewelry. You do jewelry making? Yeah, that's really cool. Uh, I've done a little bit of hobby stuff, but that's mostly just copper wire wrapping and things. But yeah, I would love to get into blacksmithing as well, and I very well may take a course one of these days so that I can make my own sword. So I'm just about done with this piece for the night. I'm going to have to uh, what's the expression? I don't want to use the racist ones. I have to improvise. There we go. I have to improvise a spray booth for the varnish for tomorrow. Um, I'm hoping it'll be a nice day tomorrow. We're supposed to get some rain tonight, so okay, let's get this done. So yeah, audio warning. Sorry. Yeah, you can tell how very hard this is because this is really having a hell of a go with this. Okay. One of the reasons that's so loud, and it's very warm now, don't do that to yourself. One of the reasons that's so loud is because this is very hard, but it's also still pretty sappy in the middle. Also, this wiggles a little bit, which is good. That should be pretty much a perfect fit for one of those candles. Not perfect, but then again, if someone were to buy tapers, tapers would have a slightly wider base, so that would actually work out. Okay, that's very warm, so I'm going to take the moment here to, first things first, disconnect your power source, and then, there we are. Get the tape off of this side now. And after having some time to cool, the tape is fairly easy to remove. I did put this on a bit thicker than I meant to, but better more than you need than less than you should have. And ta-da, there we go. Nice clean bit. That will get put away in a minute. My garbage can is over there, just out of reach. Okay, so one thing I do that I try to tell everyone that they should do is the moment I'm finished with a tool, it goes back where it belongs, because it is a real pain in the booty when you're looking for something and you can't find it. It's actually a little splintery, so I may actually take that this bit of sandpaper. Oh, actually, I'll leave it that way and see if I can't get that in there to do a bit of rounding. If this doesn't work, okay, that's a little less tightly rolled than I want it. If this doesn't work, I can always use a rotary tool with a sanding attachment, but I do tend to prefer to use the same tools all the way around, and letting that expand gives me, that's good enough. No one's going to injure themselves putting their fingers in there, at least. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, that's a little off center still. I think I killed the battery. Nope. Okay. Okay. And check my depth again. A little more. Okay. So basically what's happening, oh, that's quite nice. I don't need to do anything else with that. What's happening is when the bit catches, there's an impact motor inside the driver that basically smacks the rotator, the part of the drive that rotates, and it basically smacks it so that it overcomes that strength tension in the wood. That is a little off center, but I'm perfectly fine with that. That was kind of the point of making something rustic anyway. And yeah, anytime you guys see me picking up a drill, you should probably consider that an audio warning from here on out. Anybody? Let's see. Blacksmithing. Registered with a maker's hallmark for jewelry. Is it difficult to come by a maker's hallmark? For the record, these are very cheap drills, so I guess the okay. I was hoping to get more than 3 done before I needed to change the battery, so I'm going to try to struggle. Okay, so that battery is definitely dead. And that's quite warm. Yeah, no, the tool itself is perfectly cool. Fortunately, I have a second battery, but I have to put this one on my bench so I remember to charge it. Well, let's hope this battery has a bit more juice than the last one. And hopefully we can smash through this fairly okay, I'm down past the tape mark. That's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. The wood, I mean. So I'm just going to finish these out now and down past the tape mark on that one as well. Yeah, this middle piece is from a different branch than the other 4, and I'm suspecting that this one is actually much harder than these. You can still see the heartwood here. That means that the center of this branch was much thicker. The heartwood, the darker circle on the inside, was much stronger than the rest of it. Okay, that should be more than deep enough for all of them at this point. Okay, so that's that job done. That is very hot, as is the motor itself. I think I'm just now discovering why a lot of woodworkers have corded drills or drill presses. Um, and certainly a drill press would have made that job much easier, but I don't currently have access to one. Uh, Although I do believe I have one available to me if I need it, and I should talk to that person. A little bit of sawdust in my mouth. It's okay. It's not the first time I've had. No, not saying that. Not on this chat. Uh, anyway, folks, there's two of you watching, so I will sit down and have a cigarette, and then I will finish this off because watching me put up a piece of vinyl isn't going to be all that exciting. And really doesn't have all that much to do with actual woodworking. Other than that, I'm pretty well done for the day. I believe it's around 7 o'clock here in Newfoundland. 7:36. And, of course, job is not finished until you clean the floor. And, yeah. Now, in a lot of positions, a lot of trades, they'll tell you that your job isn't finished until cleanup is done. With cabinet making, it's actually basically critical that you finish cleanup when you're finished, because sawdust stuck to my face. And by the way, it smells absolutely incredible in here. But with cabinet making, and I do bang on about safety a fair bit. It's something that was drummed into me by my instructor and my father years ago. But with you can come a little closer now. Come a little closer, baby. But safety-wise, cleanup for a cabinet maker is far more important than it would be for, say, welding or and welding is a close second. But cleanup for cabinet making is far more important than it is for even electrical or plumbing or any number of other trades. The reason being that the material that we create that is to be cleaned up, sawdust, has a very high potential for being a fire hazard. If I were to take this lighter and touch it to that small pile of sawdust I just created, even though by and large it's all chips, there is high potential that I would immediately start a fire. And because the air right now has a certain degree of wood dust in it, not to the point that it will damage your lungs immediately, though over the course of years it probably could, and in my case probably has. The big thing that you will see in a good woodworking shop is that if someone is working, especially with a sander, they will avoid aerosolizing the product, the sawdust, especially sanding dust, because if you aerosolize it, you run the risk of creating an explosion. If you've ever been, and I know Crow, you live in the UK, if you've ever seen the episode of QI where Stephen put, I think they just called it non-dairy creamer, but coffee mate. And you can do this with any non-dairy creamer. He put some of that in a funnel and had a flame blowing across the top, and then blew through a hose to basically aerosolize this coffee mate dust. If you remember the big fireball that created, that's basically the same thing that can happen with aerosolizing sanding dust. Sawdust, not as much, but sawdust has a very, very high smolder potential. So even smoking in the room, I keep a close eye on what I'm doing with my ashes. I have a glass jar that I make sure my ashes go into. And I always, before I'm done for the day, I always sweep my floor. Generally, I'll also sweep surfaces that have a lot of sawdust on them. Not so concerned about something like that, but I cleaned that yesterday. Usually about once a week or so, I'll give the shop a full clean, and that's sweeping everything down, because this stuff, which you can't even see, uh, is so fine that, can I find a significant amount of it? There we are. Okay. So this stuff, which I'll just let sprinkle across my shirt so you can see it. There you go. You can kind of see it. That stuff lingers in the air, and that means it floats everywhere, gets onto every surface, every into every crevice. Hang on. I've been talking a lot today, so my throat is fairly dry, and plus breathing a little bit of sawdust. The thing with breathing sawdust too is generally your body will expel it, and you'll be fine. You'll sneeze a funny color a couple of times. But the locker that I keep my breather mask in, and that also has my face shield, there's a gap about that big because the door will not close. I didn't build the cabinet, so I can't be blamed for that. That said, I could probably tune it so it would close properly, which may be a job over the winter when I can't get out here to do actual woodworking. But even just having that half-inch, quarter-inch, three-quarter-inch gap, depending on what part of the door you're looking at, the door is not exactly square, that's enough that enough sawdust gets in there to actually settle on the mask, the face shield, that I had to wipe it off today before I used my my table saw, which was the last live stream I made. Other than that, folks, I have my live stream, my regular live stream, the Ask Ardent stream, which is me covering tomorrow. I think it's just going to be one story, and then I'll be doing a AMA. Because I've been doing a lot of live streaming and a lot of chatting with my chat this week, I probably won't run too long on that one, so probably half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. I do have a story that I want to do some investigation on, something the Canadian government put out, which could very well be considered, trying to find a rhyme for that word now. It rhymes with crop a panda. But I suspect that some of the factual scientific information in that particular particular piece the government produced is questionable in its veracity. Other than that, please like, share. I see people are liking, so I appreciate that very much. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. The Sultans, obviously, were, I would say preempted, but we were basically canceled the last couple of weeks by sickness or social life. Since I generally am not subject to either one of those, I don't generally have a problem. But here's to hoping Bezek's chlamydia clears up. And we'll hopefully see you guys on Saturday morning. As I said, tomorrow, 11:30, I'll be doing, 11:30 Newfoundland time. If I give you guys times, assume that they're in the Newfoundland time zone, which is an hour and a half later than the Eastern Standard Time zone in the States. And I believe 3.5 for Great Britain. But don't quote me on that. I'm terrible with keeping those time zones straight, especially when they change over the course of daylight savings. But anyway, I'll cover a bit of a news story tomorrow and do my usual AMA, which really seems to just be having a conversation, which I love. I absolutely, excuse me, I absolutely thrive on conversation. So it's definitely something I'll enjoy. So yeah, tomorrow I will do my stream in the morning. In the afternoon, I will have already set up to do the spraying for this piece, this candle holder. Once the spraying is done, that's it. I'm finished with the candle holder, and it'll be going up for sale. I'm not sure if I'm going to put it on a website. I don't have a website as yet. I keep meaning to go look for one, but I need nudges for damn near everything except woodworking. Other than that, there's not a hell of a lot going on, and I'll sign off now. It's been a great hour with you guys, so I do appreciate you sticking around to the end. Other than that, I hope you're having a good day. I hope you continue to have good days, and rise again until lambs become lions.